Music is sacred to me. Melody is God's voice. He undoubtedly has the heavenly touch. Jones, who passed away at the age of 91, was Michael Jackson's and Frank Sinatra's right-hand man and contributed to the development of jazz and pop music for more than 60 years. His albums transformed music by bridging genres, encouraging improbable partnerships, and influencing contemporary production methods. These 10 tracks highlight his flexibility, studio prowess, and ability to bring out the best in the musicians he collaborated with. Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson first met on the He invited him to create his next album on the set of the 1978 film The Wiz. The disco song was called Off the Wall. They collaborated once more on Thriller in 1982, which may have revolutionized the pop industry. In addition to producing 7 top 10 hits, it was racially inclusive, appealing to both white and black fans. Billie Jean, a sinister story about the groupies Jackson encountered while on tour with his siblings, was crucial to the success. As a producer, Jones initially didn't like the song and argued with Jackson about the lengthy instrumental introduction. He later said, "I told Michael that we needed to cut that intro. But that's the jelly," he said. "I want to dance because of that. And the rest of us should just keep quiet when Michael Jackson says, 'That's what makes me want to dance.'" Jones kept the arrangement loose and funky while those comments echoed in his head. Bruce Swedian, the sound engineer, was even given instructions by him to produce a drum sound with a sonic personality that had never been heard before. The outcome is among the most recognizable openings in pop history. It was a very close friendship. Regarding his collaboration with Frank Sinatra, which went much beyond the recording studio, Jones remarked, "You can't describe it. Sinatra created partying, 7 double Jack Daniels in an hour." Jones helped Sinatra rework his signature songs for a 4-week engagement at the Copa Room in the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas after they first connected on 1964's It Might As Well Be Swing. "Since I began performing, it was arguably the most thrilling engagement I have ever had in my life," Sinatra subsequently recounted. The diva, accompanied by the Count Basie Orchestra, sounds completely comfortable as she effortlessly performs hits like "You Make Me Feel So Young," "I've Got You Under My Skin," and "Fly Me to the Moon." However, the energy of Jones's new arrangements is best encapsulated in "Come Fly With Me," particularly in the captivating interaction between Sinatra and the brass section. Given that it is featured on the acclaimed live album Sinatra at the Sands, it is not surprising that it was selected as the show's opening piece. When Leslie Gore was a teenager, her vocal samples made. In the early 1960s, they found their way into Quincy Jones's possession. He had been working with jazz vocalists like Sinatra and Sarah Vaughan up until that moment, but he found something he enjoyed on Gore's tape. He claimed in his memoirs, "I signed her because she had a mellow, distinctive voice and sang in tune, which a lot of grown-up rock and roll singers couldn't do." Jones selected It's My Party from a stack of 200 demos for their first session and went to work. He added surprising chords and little brass flourishes while double-tracking Gore's vocals, alterations that aptly capture the adolescent anguish of the song. After learning that Phil Spector intended to record the same song with the Crystals, he then hastily released the single. As expected, it peaked at number 1 on the US charts and reached number 9 in the UK. Summer in the City is a 1960s rock classic, recorded by the Lovin' Spoonful. It captures the sticky filth of an oppressive heatwave with its forceful drum strikes and menacing organ chords. It is nearly impossible to identify Quincy Jones' rendition, which was recorded for his 1973 album You've Got It Bad Girl, as the same song. The Hammond organ is played with a feather-light touch while the player is relaxed. Then a light brushing is applied to the drums. The majority of the lyrics are removed, and Valerie Simpson, of Ashford and Simpson fame, sings them with a near-heavenly calmness when they reach the 2 feet 30 inches mark. It was first published as a B-side and has since grown to become one of Jones's most well-known tracks. It has been sampled on 87 other songs, including ones by Massive Attack, Eminem, Nightmares on Wax, and The Roots, according to WhoSampled.com. Another instance of how a song could be totally transformed by Jones's ability as an arranger. Sir Noel Coward wrote Mad About the Boy for the Words and Music Review in 1932. For Distinct Women sang it in the original, each of them confessing their love for an unidentified movie star. Perhaps Douglas Fairbanks Jr., while they stand in line to watch. The song is witty, amusing, and quirky, but Jones slowed it slower and changed the time signature from 4/4 to June 8 when Dinah Washington sang it in 1961. This gave the vocalist more freedom to explore the lyrics with a greater carnality. Disregarded at the time, it was given new life in 1992 when it made its debut in the UK charts and served as the soundtrack for a Levi's commercial. Composed in a mere 20 minutes, the soul the popularity of Brazilian music in the early 1960s, spurred by João Gilberto and Stan Getz's Desafinado, served as the inspiration for bossa nova. With chirping flutes and large trombone slides that perfectly convey the carnival's joy, Jones is in his element here. Even though the bossa craze was short-lived, Jones's song stuck around, especially in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery's introductory dance routine. Jones and Jackson had always intended for Thriller to be a hugely successful pop record. To get to 9, Jones explained, "We went through 800 songs. That's not casual. It was a tiring job. They were working in 3 different studios at one point, until the speakers caught fire." Defeat because it was intended to have Jackson played on US rock radio, an unprecedented opportunity in the highly segregated music industry of the 1980s. It was essential to the endeavor. Jackson was instructed by Jones to compose a black version of the 1979 hit song My Sharona, which sold over 10 million copies. Jackson, however, was ahead of the game. Even though his demo lacked words and a hook, it nonetheless met the requirements. Jones asked Eddie Van Halen to play the guitar solo while Jackson worked on those components. His first wordless effort at the melody may be heard on his YouTube channel. Jones subsequently recounted, "He came in and he stacked up his Gibson guitars. I'm not going to sit here and attempt to tell you what to play," I said. "We should attempt 3 or 4 takes. Some of it will be lengthy, some will be overly animated, and will." Despite the Thriller project's commercial emphasis, Jones consistently insisted that the music came first. "I've never, ever in my life done music for money or fame, because that's when God walks out of the room," he stated. Play Beat It. 8. Strawberry Letter Number 23 from the Brothers Johnson. Getty Pictures. George Johnson, Quincy Jones, and Louis Johnson embrace while grinning at the camera. Getty Pictures. George Johnson, Quincy Jones, and Louis Johnson left to right. Jones heard guitarist George Johnson and bassist Louis Johnson perform on a tape by Taka Boom, the sister of Chaka Khan. He put them in his touring band, had them play on the soundtrack of the acclaimed TV miniseries Roots, and directed their 1976 first album Look Out for Number 1, which featured a fantastic rendition of Come Together by the Beatles. However, it wasn't until 1977 that the brothers' Strawberry Letter Number 23 became widely popular. Jones's rendition, which was first recorded by Shuggie Otis, toughens up the production with a soaring backing vocal and a strutting bass line, but George Johnson found it difficult to replicate the intricate triplet notes of Shuggie's original guitar solo. Jones became frustrated and summoned session guitarist Lee Ritenour for assistance. Ritenour subsequently said, "Quincy was tearing his hair out as he walked down the hallway. I'm going to lunch, Ritenour," he said. "Do it." The romantic psychedelic tune, which peaked at number 13 in the charts, managed to find an audience despite being released during the height of the punk and disco craze. Later, Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown helped to repopularize it. Listen to Letter Number 23 from Strawberry. 9. Misty, played by Sarah Vaughan. Getty Pictures. Sarah Vaughan playing live with an orchestra in full flight. She is dressed in a sleeveless blouse with polka dots and a cream wool cap. Getty Pictures. WTVY, Elba, Alabama. Hayes' funeral home in Elba reports that Jimmy Holley, a former state senator from Alabama, passed away Monday night. He was 80 years old. Holley had most recently lived at a nursing home in Elba, according to the obituary. In 1974, Holley was first elected to the Alabama legislature, a post he held for the following 20 years. Holly was elected to the state Senate in 1998 after serving one term in office, until his retirement in 2022 due to health concerns. In July of that year, Holly told News 4 during a ceremony naming the Coffee County office building in nearby New Brockton, "Sometimes it's hard to get up and go. Everyone wanted to keep things the same in a time when everyone wants change." Throughout his 44 years in the Assembly, Holly chaired a number of influential legislative committees. The arrangements, which are still pending, will be handled by Hayes Funeral Home of Elba. Get the most recent local news and weather updates delivered directly to your inbox every morning by subscribing to our News 4 newsletter. Download our mobile applications to receive real-time alerts about News 4's top stories. All rights reserved. Copyright 2024 WTVY.ELBA, AL, WDHN. Jimmy Holly, a Coffee County native and 44-year veteran of the Alabama State Legislature, passed away on Monday. He was 80 years old. Holly passed away at the Elba Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, according to Hayes Funeral Home. The Coffee County native spent 17 years in the Texas House of Representatives after being elected to the position for the first time in 1974. Holly was elected to represent Alabama Senate District 31 in 1988. He served 6 terms before retiring in 2023. During his time in Montgomery, Holly played a crucial role in obtaining funds to assist in rebuilding Elba schools following flooding and Enterprises schools following a fatal tornado. Some of his co-workers had previously praised Holly highly. When asked about Senator Holly in 2023, Rhett Marquez stated, "I think that's 100% true that he will go down as one of the greatest statesmen and politicians that this state has ever seen." Steve Flowers, an Alabama political analyst, sung the same song, telling WDHN, "I think he's in my years of covering politics in Alabama, the most competent lawmaker I've ever encountered." Holly's funeral service will be conducted by Hayes Funeral Home. WSFA, Montgomery, Alabama, following a medical incident Sunday night while attending a campaign rally for Caroline Dobson, the candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama is doing well. The celebration was placed at Sweet Creek Farm Market on Pike Road, and Ivey, 80, was one of several people who attended. According to witnesses, she was trembling when she clutched a nearby pole while standing behind Dobson. As soon as the governor was able to sit, her staff gathered around her, and later medical personnel were called to examine her. Ivey's staff, when contacted for response, stated that the governor became dehydrated. As a precaution, she was assessed on-site and given fluids, stated Gina Maiola, Director of Communications for Ivey. "The governor immediately felt better and is at home doing well this evening," Maiola continued. "When the body loses more fluid than it takes in to perform regular bodily activities, dehydration results. Although dehydration can happen to anybody, children and the elderly are more vulnerable and at risk. So the Mayo Clinic says, fatigue, lightheadedness, and disorientation are possible symptoms." In 2019, Ivey, the governor since April 2017, received a stage 1 lung cancer diagnosis. After undergoing therapy, her office declared in 2020 that her physicians deemed her cured. Not using the WSFA News app to read the story? Get news alerts more quickly and for free from the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Copyright WSFA 2024. All rights reserved. Neither Alexandra King nor Jessica Simpson are connected to him. No, Pierce Holly, a quarterback for Eastern Illinois, has not yet surpassed Jimmy Garoppolo or Tony Romo in terms of dating life. Nonetheless, Holly has several characteristics with the NFL players. While playing at the same college, they all received praise. This season, Holly takes on the Illinois Fighting Illini on Thursday. He comes in as the Ohio Valley Conference's preseason Offensive Player of the Year. The majority of training camp was devoted to the Illini defense's preparation to contain him. Aaron Henry, the defensive coordinator for the Illini, stated, "I think this cat is so underrated. He is as gifted as they come. This season, I believe we'll play a lot of talented quarterbacks, which I'm looking forward to." After passing for 2,741 yards and 17 touchdowns, Holly, who started his collegiate career at Georgetown, was named to the second team of the conference. With the Panthers' pass-happy offense, he is anticipated to have an even better season. The Illini are treating Holly like a top prospect even though he isn't yet attracting the NFL's interest. "He's savvy," observed Henry. "He is a really good ball thrower. He is adept at escaping stressful circumstances. He manages their offense quite effectively. He is able to obtain the early on. It will be a pretty good test for us." Holly, who will retire from the Alabama Senate in November after serving in the legislature for almost 50 years, has served in the State House of Representatives from 1974 to 1994 and has served 6 terms as a senator representing Coffee, Dale, Pike, and Covington counties. Over the years, I have learned many basic principles from Senator Holly, and 2 of them stand out above the rest. The effectiveness of servant leadership is among them. Sen has a strong sense of loyalty and service. Holly, and always has, throughout his tenure at Troy and as a public figure, he consistently provided at least what was required of him. As a people, we will find it difficult to live without Senator Holly in an elected position. Thank you so much, Senator Holly. Being able to work with and getting to know him has been enjoyable, he remarked. Along with his legislative work, Holly was an administrator at Troy University from 1984 to 2007, where he served as the Center for Developmental Education's director before retiring as the Regional and Service Center's director and the Vice Chancellor's assistant. A member and former President Pro Tem of the Troy University Board of Trustees, former State Senator Gerald Dial R. Lineville, started working alongside Holly in the House in 1974 and was his suite mate in. According to a statement from his family, Murray Sinclair, the Anishinaabe former senator and judge who oversaw Canada's Historic Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, investigation into the nation's residential schools, passed away at the age of 73. A national leader in Indigenous justice and activism, Sinclair was a grandpa and father of 5. His efforts resulted in enormous changes to legislation, medicine, policing, and, most importantly, interactions between Indigenous people and the government. Sinclair passed away, peacefully and surrounded by love, in a hospital in Winnipeg, according to his family. According to the statement, Sinclair committed his life in service to the people. After his mother passed away from a stroke, Sinclair, who was born on a Manitoba reservation on January 24, 1951, was raised by his Cree grandfather Jim Sinclair and his Ojibwe grandmother Catherine. His grandparents were also compelled to go to a residential school. As part of a program to integrate Indigenous children and eradicate their traditions and languages, the government supported residential schools. At the age of 25, Sinclair enrolled in Manitoba's law school and practiced for 11 years before becoming the province's first and the nation's second Indigenous judge. He oversaw the pediatric cardiac surgery inquest into the deaths of 12 children at a Winnipeg hospital and was co-chair of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry of Manitoba. Prior to assuming control, in 2015, the TRC, one of the most significant organizations in Canadian history, published its final report. Sinclair's involvement with the TRC and his determination that residential schools constituted a cultural genocide changed how Canadians perceived the state-run boarding institutions that ravaged Indigenous communities for centuries. Why hundreds of children have died and why Canada is grieving. Canada pays $2.8 billion to resolve a lawsuit about residential schools. Between 1874 and 1996, over 150,000 First Nations, Métis and Inuit children were removed from their homes and sent to state-run boarding schools as part of the government's strategy of forced assimilation. Generations of Indigenous children were traumatized by the policy, which compelled them to give up their native tongues, learn English or French, and become Christians. According to Sinclair, an estimated 6,000 students perished while attending the schools. Murray Sinclair passed away at the age of 73. He was an Anishinaabe judge, senator, and university chancellor who changed Canada's legal system and made the public face the harsh truth of the Indigenous residential school system. Mizanagizhik, Sinclair's spirit name, which translates to the one who speaks of pictures in the sky, was an advocate for Indigenous rights and efforts at reconciliation. his life to undo the glaring injustices that colonial imperialism has caused to many Indigenous communities. As the first Indigenous judge in Manitoba, Sinclair presided over Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which gathered testimonies from survivors of horrifying abuses in the nation's residential school system over the course of 6 years, and came to the conclusion that Canada had engaged in cultural genocide. His family confirmed his passing in a statement, saying, "The impact of our dad's work reached far across the country and the world, from law students to survivors of residential schools. He was always regarded as a superb listener who treated everyone with respect and decency by those who sat opposite from him in a courtroom." They reported that a ceremonial fire has been lighted outside Manitoba's legislature to assist guide his spirit home. Political leaders began to pay their respects. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, wrote on social media, "He was kind, patient, and understanding to people like me, who had a lot to learn. Canada has lost a giant with his passing, a trusted leader on our path to reconciliation, a champion of Indigenous rights, and a brilliant legal mind." Manitoba Premier Wab Kinyu commended Sinclair's legacy. "Our country won't produce another someone with Murray Sinclair's caliber for a very long time. He demonstrated to us that without the truth, there can be no reconciliation." "I'll miss you, my friend," commented Mark Miller, a former Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Sinclair broke barriers and inspired countless individuals to pursue reform and justice with courage and determination, according to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Born on January 24, 1951, Sinclair, a member of the Peguis First Nation, grew up in Selkirk, Manitoba, amidst the Canadian prairies. He was the year's best athlete and valedictorian when he graduated from high school. He quit school to take care of his grandma, which ended his post-secondary physical education studies. After enrolling in law school, Sinclair graduated first in his class and was admitted to the bar in 1980. In 1988, less than 10 years later, he was appointed as Manitoba's first Indigenous judge. Designated as a co-commissioner of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry in Manitoba. The investigation, which looked code that mandated that while determining punishment, judges take into account the histories of Indigenous offenders and evaluate alternatives to incarceration. The historic Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which Sinclair oversaw, came to the conclusion in 2015 that the residential school system constituted to cultural genocide. The commission heard heartbreaking testimonies from survivors, who made it very evident that there had been widespread physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. According to the final study, sickness and neglect claimed the lives of over 4,100 youngsters. And suicide, while Sinclair has expressed his belief that the actual number may be as high as 15,000 cases. Sinclair claimed in a 2021 interview with The Guardian that the panel was unable to look into. Criminal charges were thwarted, as were attempts to acquire important government and religious documents. Files Canadian Minorities Education Indigenous Description Cath. Files Thundersky Justin Young, L. and Daryl LeBoucan drum and perform healing songs at a temporary memorial in Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada, on June 2, 2021, in remembrance of the 215 children whose remains were found interred close to the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. Late on June 23, 2021, the Cowessess community in Saskatchewan Province declared that investigations at the site had revealed the horrific and shocking discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves of the former Marieval boarding school, less than a month after the bones of 215 children were found in a mass grave, some 150 kilometers, 90 miles, east of Regina, the provincial capital. Surprised the country with Kamloops. Every school to continue reading. Our social institutions, the government, and even the general public agree that what was done to Indigenous people was wrong. Numerous apologies have been offered, along with the assurance that things will improve. However, nothing has changed, he stated. As long as any modifications are made grudgingly, it indicates that there is still a desire, aptitude, and readiness to return to the previous state of affairs. Sinclair retired in 2021 after being appointed to the Senate in 2016. He was awarded Canada's highest honor, the Order of Canada, the following year for his support of Indigenous peoples' rights and liberties. He used the honor to emphasize that all Canadians must struggle to put an end to a long-running, multi-decade campaign of racial injustice. Maintaining that sense of Indigenous inferiority required ongoing work. The Honorable Murray Sinclair served as a moral compass in all of his roles, pointing us all in the direction of the road to reconciliation, and I offer my sympathies to his family on behalf of the University of Manitoba, said President Michael Benarroch. The University of Manitoba is dedicated to upholding his legacy by promoting efforts at reconciliation both inside and outside of our community. It is indeed an honor for us to host the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, which were made possible by Sinclair's efforts and leadership. Additionally, even though his voice and vision will be incredibly, his son Niganwi Whittam Sinclair, who is currently a professor in the Department of Indigenous Studies, questioned Sinclair's choice to accept an honorary degree from a religious organization that was involved in residential schools when he received one from St. John's College at the University of Manitoba in 2002. Instead of directly answering, Nigan recalled, his father stood in front of church officials and demanded the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's why I do it, he said to Nigan after leaving the stage. In a talk with the president, Nigan recalled, he made an argument for an investigation into the issue of residential schools, and that this country needs to commit to survivors, listen to them, and believe them. This is the 19th installment of an interview series featuring the upcoming generation of classical musicians. Ed. Written by staff reporter Lee Hyo-won. Renato Sirios is a well-known Italian conductor, composer, and orchestrator who has collaborated with musicians including Josh Groban, Andrea Bocelli, and Sarah Brightman. His most recent endeavor has led him to, with 4 up-and-coming vocalists, Viva Voce, South Korea will set off on a brand new musical adventure. When the 61-year-old first heard Viva Voce, he remarked in an interview with the Korea Times, I heard the song of the future. At a music festival last year, they performed Korean music. He met the young artists and traveled to Seoul to direct their debut album after a year in Rome touched a deep chord with him. Korean songs express all the emotions and meanings, despite having a very simple melody, he remarked. The maestro offers 2 brand new pieces for their recording. Specifics have not yet been made public. According to Sirios, despite their European arrangement, they are distinguished by the lovely simplicity of Korean songs. Each member, 3 tenors and 1 baritone, is a rising soloist who performs in Korea and Europe. I am thrilled to collaborate with a maestro like him. He treats us as though we were his sons. Liel, a first tenor, is 26. He truly treats us with such kindness and compassion, concurred Joshua, a 26-year-old third tenor. Sirios, their father, grinned broadly in response to this remark. Alfredo, a 27-year-old second tenor, stated, we all began singing in Korea and then studied in Italy, and the maestro continues to inspire us. It's a true honor. He is giving us access to new musical possibilities, stated 26-year-old baritone Guno. The fact that the 4 vocalists harmonize to produce an organ-like sound even though they are each unique soloists tremendously delights Sirios. They merge and change their distinct, vibrant voices to produce an organ-like choral sound. He compared it to preparing a delicious dinner by combining various elements that complement one another. The members claimed to have impacted each other's personalities and musical tastes when they were living and working together. The head of the International Music Company, which established Viva Voce, and seasoned baritone Lim Song-kyu, described the young men as akin to a fraternity. Alfredo stated, we have arrived to establish genuine harmony by harmonizing L's high notes with Joshua's middle range and Guno's warm, fragrant lows. They work well with songs that Sirios initially wrote for a single voice because of these group dynamics. The youthful energy enhances the music's youthfulness and freshness, despite its deep traditional roots. Among the vocalists,